Now at 6, alarming allegations are coming to light involving the brother of megachurch pastor John Hagee. Good afternoon, I'm Aaron Wright. Jack Hagee was arrested yesterday in Houston. He's facing charges of aggravated sexual assault of a child and indecency with a child. Eyewitness News reporter Mariah Medina explains what investigators say Pastor Hagee did when he found out about these allegations.
74-year-old Jack Hagee was arrested amid allegations he sexually abused a child in the late 80s through the late 90s. His mugshot was released today. Take a look. Court documents state Jack Hagee sexually abused a relative for years, starting when she was 5 years old. The victim, who's now an adult, came forward telling police that it started as molestation and escalated to a full-on sexual relationship. Investigators say the victim confided in a relative who in turn told Jack Hagee's brother, Cornerstone senior pastor and founder John Hagee. Court documents state John Hagee then confronted his brother via phone, telling him he was no longer welcome in his home. An affidavit states John Hagee told police his brother admitted to touching the victim when she was a child. A spokesperson for John Hagee released the following statement about why he himself did not report the allegations when the victim came forward as an adult. The statement reads, quote, "He and his wife have offered and given their full and unconditional support to the victim, including respecting her decision when to go to law enforcement and also speaking to law enforcement on the victim's behalf." Jack Hagee was released from jail this morning on combined $65,000 bonds. Online court records show he's due in court next month. And Harris County employment records show Hagee was employed as a law enforcement officer with the Precinct 3 Constable's office during the time of the alleged abuse. He was dishonorably discharged from the office in 2015 and was not employed by the Constable's office. Aaron?